Well, folks, we are back at the MX-5, and in the previous video, you will have seen me removing the engine and gearbox from the car. Well, I've been busy off camera doing a couple of little bits and pieces, and we're going to get stuck into the engine today and get that ready to go back into the car. Off camera, I was just tidying up a little bit of rust in around the engine bay, just treating it with some rust preventative or rust converter stuff. So that's all done. I'll be priming and painting that at a later stage. The passenger side wing is properly fitted, and the welding is done that needed to be done in there as well. So I did that off camera. It was just along there, so that's all welded up and seam sealed, and I put a layer of under seal on it as well, and did all in there. So that's all good. And now, because the passenger wing is in place properly, the passenger door will open. The only thing I need to figure out is why the alignment is so poor there. It's fine down there, but up here it's all arseways. Need to come back to that. Anyway, engine. So I had grand plans of putting the engine in the engine stands that I have, but I don't have the bolts to attach it to. I know it's a stupid excuse, but it's an excuse nonetheless. So I'm going to just leave it in the engine hoist or put it down on the ground when necessary. But you will see that what I have done in the meantime is I have taken off the flywheel and the clutch. Previous owner converted this car to manual, and this is the clutch and pressure plate that they put into it. Are you actually joking me? Anyway, look at the state of the flywheel as well. Beggars belief. Anyway, being that this car is being converted back to automatic, we're going to be putting a flex plate on here instead of the clutch and flywheel. So that's going to be a job to be done today, along with the timing belt, and I'm going to change the spark plugs. I'm going to do the auxiliary belt and a few other little bits and pieces, and just make sure the engine is 100%. So first job is the timing belt, and it's a 4-spanner rating. So this one spanner is going to try it anyway. Not only try it, I'm going to do it. So anyway, right, so let's have a look and see. Let's see what it says. You mad bastard, you're actually about to do this, aren't you? Yeah, I am. Right, okay, so disconnect the battery negative lead as described in chapter. Drain the cooling system. Remove the engine undershields. I think we're probably safe enough on that. Slacken clamps, undo the bolt where applicable, and remove the air intake duct. Done. Disconnect the upper radiator hose and the small enclosure. Yeah, that's done. On 98 on models, that doesn't apply to us. This is 93. Slacken coolant pump pulley bolts and remove the crankshaft pulley as described in section 5 on some 1.6 litre models 1989 to 91 with 4 slots in the crankshaft pulley. Recover the inner and outer timing belt guide plate. See illustration. Well, we'll come back to that now. Let's get the belt off. We're going to need to take that pulley off. We're going to need to get this out of our way, and then our bottom pulley has got 4 bolts in it, so I suppose we're going to be taking them off as well. Now, one of those bolts is different to the others. I do wonder, has somebody been in here before? Well, they have, because that shouldn't be different. Anyway, let's get the Haynes Book of Lies out of the way for the moment, and just feel our way through this. Alright, so we have our little adjuster doodle firkins over here. 12. Alright. Fortunately enough, nothing in this car is actually tight. There we go. Alright, there's the auxiliary belt off. Now, so far as I can tell, the timing belt has actually been... the timing belt drives the water pump. But I thought that was the water pump. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Anyway, right. We'll figure that out after. Let's get... Yeah, that has to be the water pump, doesn't it? We'll get those 3 bolts out. That is the water pump. Grand. Okay, so it's not driven by the timing belt, which makes life an awful lot easier because it means I don't have to change the water pump as part of this job. Next, I'm going to take off the crankshaft bolt, even for the bottom pulley. spacer. Alright, so that's the bottom pulley off. So now, get our cover off. So there is a bolt there, supposed to be a bolt there, supposed to be a bolt there. There is a bolt there, there. Okay, let's get them all out. The long bolts are going to be the ones for the timing belt cover, so it's easy enough to identify. I think I just need to literally pry this off. This mini pry bar is dead handy. So, I'm anticipating that if the timing belt has been done on this car before, recently, it's probably going to have been done wrong. If it hasn't been done, it's going to be in a jock and needs to be done. So, either way, we're going to be doing it. There's probably a ridge in the back of it. Anyway, we need to take the rocker cover off, or cam cover as you modern folks say. So let's get that off now. I need to take off, there's a hose here which has to come off as well. So it's the crankcase breather. We'll keep it low to the ground there now. Next thing is this bracket that holds the ignition coils in place. So that'll come off now. They look like 12s and a okay. There's our ignition coil out of the way. Just put that away safely. This is my first kind of real look inside this engine, so we're going to have a gander and see what sort of condition it's in. So get you guys in a bit closer as well. So what we're going to do now is pop the rocker cover off. I'm going to keep calling it a rocker cover, folks. It's just because I'm kind of have a bit of an old school mindset in that regard, but I know it's a cam cover. Okay, so right there. Leave it attached. Okay. It's not terrible. And it does look like a new belt. And it's also tight. So, let's get this out of the way. So there's one of our timing belt covers. Another one. Oh, look at the state of the tension. Jesus wept. So whatever about the belt, even if the belt is fine, the tensioner is bunched. There we go. So there's our covers off. So yeah, somebody's been in here before. You can see it. That pulley is marked exhaust. I nearly have been happier if nobody had been in here. Haven't seen what I've seen up until now. Right. Okay. So let's consult the manual and figure out now what we need to do, because yeah, we've now got access. Before I go any further, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark all of the timing marks on the pulleys and stuff like that with paint marker, just to make them much more visible. So there's one there, and then there's another one here. All right, and then we have a mark on the crankcase down here. So I'm going to actually just mark that up as well, just for ease of identification. Now, I've never changed a timing belt on a 16 valve engine, but what I have done is I've changed timing belts on diesel engines, and you end up with the same number of pulleys essentially. I know they work differently, okay, but yeah. So let's have a look and see what we need to do here. I cannot believe those tensioners are so bad. It looks like they're not actually even turning properly. Yeah, they turn all right, but Jesus, like. Anyway, look, it doesn't matter, we've got new ones. So, yeah, I need to figure out what the story is of this. It's like a flanged pulley, so the flange is going to stop me from getting the belt off. So do I have to take the pulley off in order to... That's kind of annoying. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to rotate this, rotate the engine so that this line and this line line up with these kind of marks in the backing plate. So let's just rotate the engine first of all, okay? 2 notches in this pulley. So we're gonna, yeah. So it's the one you'll see. There's an E on this one and an I on this one. Yeah. So okay, right. I see what it is now. So the E is here. So that's so if this was acting as the exhaust pulley, it would be that mark there. But because it's the intake, well, this is the exhaust. Hang on. Yeah. So that's the exhaust pulley, and the mark is lined up there, even though the I is lined up, and the E is down here. And yet the engine's running. See, so that's the thing. Right, let me have a think about this now. Alright, so we've got our timing marks lined up. I'm not going to get bogged down with it. Obviously there's something I'm not getting here, but the fact that the engine's running and the timing marks are lined up, I'm going to go with this. So this is the exhaust side, it's lined up here, and the intake side is lined up here. Maybe it's just because the I at the top here and the E at the top here, you can actually line it up using those 2 top marks. I don't know. Anyway, right. Next thing we're going to do is get that bottom crankshaft pulley bolt out, which is a pain in the ass because you have to hopefully do it without rotating the engine. So I'm going to see if it'll come out with the impact gun first of all, and I'll get an impact socket because I'd say it's going to take a bit of rattling to get it out. There we go. Right. And the engine didn't move, which is great. So now we need to get a tapping stick to get that off. What is the point of this bloody thing? It's annoying. I think this is the plate they were talking about that's only on earlier engines. Obviously they modded it out. Alright. So that's that off. We'll give that a clean up obviously as well. And our marks are all still aligned. So now what I am going to do is I'm going to transfer marks from the pulleys onto the belt, okay? And that'll act as a verification basically that we have the new belt on the right way, because we will be we'll put the same marks on the new belt. Now, it's not going to be the be all and end all of the alignment, but it will serve as a kind of a guide. So we'll use our top marks here on. Let's see. So from that. All right, that there. We'll draw an arrow here as well, so we know what way the belt is going. And there is a dimple here, and that is going to be when we make our mark on the crank. So now we know that if we take the belt off, transfer those marks onto the new belt, and the marks don't line up on the new belt, then we've got something wrong and we need to readdress it. But either way, we need to make sure that our timing marks all line up. So yeah, let's start by undoing the tensioner, and then we can see, we're going to have to get some of these pipes out of the way as well, because and they did say that in the book, but I didn't listen. Tensioner bolts are 14s. All right. There's one of our tensioner rollers. See what I mean? And look at the state of that. It's actually all pitted and corroded. That is unbelievable. I mean, so in theory somebody may have actually changed the timing belt and didn't actually change the tensioner. Where are these people? Alright, there's their tensioner spring, so that can come off there now as well. And leave that aside. And now our belt will come off. So yeah, so I'm going to transfer those marks onto the new belt, which I'm going to go and get now. Okay, so here's the new belt, and you'll see I have transferred our marks onto it. So now what I can do is I can put this here on that pulley, this here on this pulley, route this around. And this. So now I'm going to get the new tensioners on, bit of tread lock, and job's oxo. Put there for a second and get the static tensioner pulley on first of all. So yeah, so bit of tread lock on that. I'll get the correct torque figure and we'll torque them up as well. Oh, a bit too much there. Right. We are going to be torquing that, as I said. That can go in there. Obviously, we're not going to run this in all the way. We need to get the tensioner spring in. Just buzz it in a bit. All right. So there's a pivot pin that it goes on, the bottom piece goes onto, and then the spring goes on the top, hooks onto another pin over there, and that's what gives us our tension. I have a funny feeling this is going to be great crack trying to get onto this pin. Nope, not a big deal at all. Alright, and just buzz that up. I'm going to get a torque wrench and we're going to torque them up now. So these are 50 Newton meters. So it's already at 50, more than 50. Ground job. Okay, I'm going to leave them at whatever they are at the moment, so I'm happy enough with that. So now we can actually just start building everything back up, get our timing cover back on and everything as well. First things first, I'm going to put that on because I've given that a little bit of a clean up on the wire wheel. It's got a woodruff key in it and everything as well, so we're going to just tap that at home. And we're going to need to torque that. We're going to need to put a bit of tread lock on that and torque it as well. So tread lock on this as well, because we do not want this coming loose. As we know. If you watch my videos about the camper van, you will have seen my mishap on the bottom pulley on that and what happened when the bloody thing loosened. It was my own stupid fault, but there was swearing, let me just tell you. Alright, so that's that home, and we're just going to get a torque figure and get a torque wrench on that. Right, so apparently you're supposed to replace this bolt at any time it's removed. It's probably a stretch bolt. I don't have the new bolt, so we're just going to put it back in. Okay. I would suggest if you are going to do it that you renew it though. So let's just buzz this out for a second because I need to find out what length it is. And once I know what length it is, then we can actually apply the specific torque that's in the book, because it's either 115 or 160 depending on its length. So this is the 53mm bolt, so the torque is 118 Newton meters. So this could be a bit of fun trying to get that torque with the engine inclined to rotate. So we'll put that in for a second. Set our torque wrench up. So we're just going to rotate everything get our timing marks lined up again. Make sure that they're still aligned, which they are. Now the marks you made on the belt won't line back up again, but the marks that you made on the marks on the crankshaft should. Well, if they don't, then you've got a problem. Alternator sounding. It's alright. Okay, now I need to find a way of holding this from turning, so I might wait until I've got the flex plate on. That might be the next job I do, because once I've got the flex plate on, then I can use something to stop it from turning at that end, and then we can get our correct torque. Okay, so I just stuck a couple of bolts in the far end of the engine there, and that's going to be what I'm going to use to right. Grand job. Okay, that's them torqued. That's that torqued. Straight lock on it and everything as well. It's not a massive torque, so it's not really a problem to do it this way. So now lastly, before we reassemble everything, the manual states that we should back off the tensioner pulley here and let the spring take up any slack that's in the belt after having rotated it, and then torque it again. So we're going to do that. Alright. Didn't move. That's kind of what we want, really. Okay, and we'll get a torque wrench on there and stick 50 on it. So we get 50 Newton meters on that, and then we can start rebuilding everything. Just get our covers back on, our pulleys, and we're going to be putting new auxiliary belts on it as well. Okay, great job. So let's get everything else put back together now. I'm just looking here. The reason I think these there were no bolts in these is because there's actually broken bolts in them. So ideally, yeah, I'd like to get them out, but I'm not going to be honest with you. They're fine. They're not. It's not like it's the engine's going to fall out as a result of it. So yeah. Anyway, let's get this refitted. It's a bit fiddly, but there's one bolt that goes in there. Now I'm going to get a little drop of copper grease on these bolts as I'm putting them in, because sure as hell, if I ever need to take it off, they're going to be rotten in there and I'll never get them out otherwise. Alright, so the covers are back on. I gave them a wipe down. I got a new hose clamp for this. Same type, so the one with the little squeezy bit. I don't really like them, but may as well keep things relatively original. Such a bugger to put on. The smaller ones are alright, but this one is quite a big one, so I'm trying to get all the legs squeezed together at the same time. There we go. That's the job. Now, okay, right, that's that one off. So that goes in there. Gave it a little lick of black paint as well, so looks the part too. So pop that back on. There's a dowel pin to line it up. Oh, you absolute bastard. Broke the bloody bolt. I have the torque setting on the impact gun on a low setting as well, so it must have been on the way out. Great, that's going to be fun to get out now. Now this should be fun. go. Knock a splines bit into it instead of running a stupid easy out, because all I think those easy outs do is just expand out and jam the bolt even further into the bloody hole. Anyway, right, that's that done. Get a new bolt. Alright, let's try that again, and this time I won't, I think I might just put them in by hand. These bolts are shit! What the hell? My god, I literally did not put any pressure on that at all. Oh, for God's sake. I cannot believe for a second that these are the bolts that are supposed to be in it. They're like something you get in bloody Woodies or something like that. Probably are, I don't know that. Nothing surprises me in this car anymore. Where'd you get your crankshaft bolts from? Woodies. Oh, right, okay. Sound. Grand. Right, at least that came out as well. Right, I'll get rid of that other, the one of them that's not broken. It must be made of toffee. Volkswagen bottom pulley bolts. I'm not going to say that Volkswagens do things better than Mazdas too often in this, but if they're the standard bolts that come with a Mazda, then definitely Volkswagen win over on this one. Okay, right. That bottom pulley is now on with decent bolts. Right, I could have done without that. Anyway, right, water pump pulley. Alright, I have more Volkswagen bottom pulley bolts, and I've put washers on these. It should be absolutely fine. Okay, new auxiliary belt to go on. So, and what I've done is I have cleaned up the adjuster mechanism for the alternator as well. So, I'll be able to correctly adjust that. There we go. Jeez, I don't really leave you much slack to get that on, did it? Oh, come on. Once it's on over the pulley, it'll be fine. It's just the alternator is like it's fouling on the, of all things, the timing belt cover. Is this even the right alternator for this car? I mean, this has definitely been changed. It's probably off a bloody Ford Transit or something like that. Sure, the bottom bolt is loose anyway on it. Nothing's tight. Nothing is tight whatsoever. May as well just take this bolt out. Right. It's a Mitsubishi alternator. I mean, it could, in theory, Mazda could be using the Mitsubishi part, but I wouldn't be so sure. Put that on now in a minute as well. Alright, so I just took off this this block on the alternator for adjusting it so I can actually goop everything up as I have done on everything else. Means that then when it comes to adjusting the alternator, it should be a fairly straightforward operation because everything won't be seized up. We don't want to tighten this all the way until we're This kind of acts as a clamp, if you know what I mean. So you use this bolt here to put tension on the alternator. So this is pulling the belt tight, and then when you've got the belt to the correct tension, then you tighten that and you tighten the bottom one. That's not bad at that now. Alright, I'm going to go with that. Now we can tighten this up. Alright, and we're tightening the bottom one up now as well. Of course, that's a 14 just for added convenience. Alright. That took far too long to put the auxiliary belt on. But anyway, that's that done. Next thing we can do is we're going to put the rocker cover back on. I'll probably be taking it off in the future to paint it. So, well, I will be. But, so for that reason, I'm not going to put a new gasket on it just yet. I'll keep the new gasket for when I'm actually going to be putting it back on for the last time. But for the time being anyway, let's get it back on and we'll get all the bolts in. And we're going to change the spark plugs and change the oil filter. And that's two other things we can tick off the list. And I have an engine mount I need to change as well because it's got a sheared bolt in it. Alright, so next I am going to write the mileage on the timing cover down here so that we know when the belt is last done. There we go. Not too bad. So a quick reference as to when the belt is last done. And what we're going to do now, do the spark plugs, we're going to change the oil filter, and then change that engine mount, and we're going to get the flex plate on. So there are 4 jobs, and then we're fairly close to having this engine ready to go back into the car. So the spark plugs I took out don't look terrible, but they're not great. And the thing about it is that this engine was running on some crappy fuel. I've drained the fuel tank since. You've seen that in the last video where I actually removed the engine. But yeah, we've new, these are NGKs, but we've new Denso plugs that go into it anyway as well. So we're going to fit them. I'm just going to check the gap and see if they're alright as well. Alright, so the spark plug gap is supposed to be between 1 and 1.1 millimeters. Here I have a 0.762 and a 0.254 feeler gauge, so that kind of puts me somewhere in the middle. And putting that there, they're absolutely perfect. So that one is in. So it doesn't make as much of a difference in newer cars, to be honest with you, but certainly on older cars it does make a difference to get the spark plug gap right. But for the sake of the 2 seconds it takes to just check them, we'll just do it. Grand job. Right. I'm guaranteeing 90% of mechanics out there do not do that anymore. Actually, I'd say even more than 90%. Right, so let's get them wound in. Let's do it by hand first. Aluminium alloy head. Perfect opportunity to strip threads, and we do not want to do that. Right, there we go. Spark plugs are done. So now I'm going to fit our new oil filter. So we know the engine has 97,000 kilometers on it. So, well, we don't actually, because this engine's not original to the car. We know the car has 97,000 kilometers on it, so that's what we're going with. So 97k and October 2024. What's the best? This old one is stitched onto it. Either that or loose. No, it's probably the only thing on the damn car that's actually tight. Oh, for God's sake, people do not need to stitch the oil filters like this. Okay. Wasn't a stitch to some have come across in the past, but it was still fairly tight. Now, we're just going to take some of the oil off the old filter. To be honest with you, the filter looks fairly fresh, the one I've removed, but without knowing for sure, I'm not going to take any chances. So I'm just going to wipe off the sealing surface on that there as well. Now, alright, so that's that. Alright, so now we're going to put the flex plate on. So what we're going to do is, this is a little collar that needs to go into the inside of the crankshaft here like this. And then our flex plate goes on over that. Doesn't seem like it matters what orientation it goes in. I suppose there's really not that much rotating mass in this, so it doesn't probably matter, but I would have thought there was something to tell you. Anyway, right, and then there's this little spacer plate here as well. Now, we have different bolts to hold the flex plate on than we did to hold the flywheel on because they're shorter. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to put a bit of Loctite on each of these bolts, and I'm going to run them in with the impact gun, and then we're going to torque them. These are some bolts you really do not want coming loose, so Loctite is definitely a good shout on this. So the engine will not run like this. You know, normally if it just had the flywheel on it, the engine would run, but because of the fact that there's no mass in the flex plate, the engine wouldn't run. You'd have to have the torque converter attached to it as well, because the torque converter is essentially what's acting as your flywheel. You don't put the torque converter on the flex plate before you put it onto the gearbox. You put the torque converter into the gearbox first, because it needs to line up with all of the splines that go through the gearbox. Alright, so let's just buzz them in anyway there. They should be 19s. Right, let's get them torqued. The torque is 103, so I'm just going to wedge the... there we go, yeah, that's doing the job. Last one, come on. There we go, right. So that's the flex plate on. Another job off the list. Last job on my list is to take off the engine mount here and replace it, because as I said, there is a broken bolt. Let's see now. Yeah, so the start motor is actually attached to the engine mount. Somewhat inconvenient if you have to take the start motor out with the engine in the car, but in this instance I have to get the start motor out anyway. Oh, okay, well there you go. It's not that big a deal. Alright. Really? Oh, I've had the engine in the stand, but there's no way I was going to go and buy bolts for that job. Alright, so now just have to take that nut off the back there. The start motor needs to come off because you have to be able to tighten the bolts for the torque converter through the hole for it. I presume that's where you tighten it. Yes, it is. Good. Okay, that's not too bad. Right, let's get that engine mount swapped out. Alright, so I have to take one of them back out to do the starting motor, but it's there anyway, so when I'm looking for it I know where it is. Just buzz that on a little bit there. Okay, right, so that is the engine mount swapped, flex plate on, timing belt, auxiliary belt, spark plugs, oil filter, and I think I'm going to call it that for the moment. So in the next video, what I'm going to be doing is getting the gearbox organised, having a look at the wiring on the car, making sure everything's squared away with that, marrying the engine and gearbox together and getting them into the car. So I hope you'll join me for that, and yeah, I'll see you in a future video. Please do hit the subscribe button before you go, and I'll chat to you then.